Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We are going to start, and hopefully, my colleagues will jump on soon for the ones that are able to. But we're going to start off with City Council Resolution 18-0110, and that's the investigative hearing for residential requirements for city officials for the purpose of calling for a hearing to measure the compliance of city officials with residency and voting registration requirements and to determine how to move forward so that 100% compliance is reached. Today we have on a call Councilwoman Mary Platt Clark in the 14th District, and from the mayor's office, I don't think, do we have anybody? Matt Stegman from the mayor's office and Elena DePietro from the law department. And Councilwoman McCray is on now from the 2nd District. And from the Council President's office, we have Dominique McGalley, and I think that's it. We're good. Okay, so we can start. We're going to start with the first agency. We'll just jump right in and we'll go to for the law department. Oh, I just want to make sure that we go ahead.
Hi, the law department has had the opportunity to review the bill in conjunction with the state enabling legislation. And we took the time to just, explain a few of the aspects of the bill that might have caused people to wonder whether, how this was the right process, because of course, we're doing this before the effective date of the state legislation. But
we're on the second one first. We're trying to wait for Bill Henry to do the police. Okay.
Well, the law department then stands by its report on that.
Okay, perfect. So I have a question though, Elena.
Yes.
I'm just curious. In the residential requirements law, it defines agency as in a department, bureau or division within a department. It goes on to define official as any at-will supervisory employee who reports directly to the mayor or to the head of the agency. By those definitions provided in the law, should it be interpreted that at-will supervisory employees that are heads of bureaus and divisions within a department are required to be city residents?
I'd have to go back and look at it a little more carefully. Let me get, if you want to come back to me, I'll read it over real closely and answer your question in a minute or two.
Okay.
I have the law up here, if I guess got to find it.
And I'm just curious for this, is the mayor's chief of staff and the deputy chiefs required to be in compliance with this law?
I'm not sure that they are agencies or departments in the same way that, the ongoing type of what we think of as departments administratively and the executive part of the city are. Because they are generally changed with each administration, and they're sort of set up by whoever the mayor is at the time. So I don't think of them as in that same category, and they're generally not called agencies or bureaus or things like that. So that's my first impression of that for the answer to that question.
Okay. And are we going to say the same thing for our directors of mayoral offices required to be in compliance with the law?
Mayor office in what sense? Like the ones that are defined as mayoral offices in the like the organizational charts or whatever. That would be my thinking as well for them, because generally those are not civil service. They're not established by the charter or by the code. So they're not set up the same way as you think of the permanent agencies and bureaus and departments are.
Would quasi-agencies, would they be required to be under the same?
The quasis.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'd have to look at each one of those specifically and see how they're set up. Some of them are, they're not part of the city. Most of them are corporate bodies in and of themselves, 501c3s that have boards of directors and that don't necessarily report to the mayor, although they send a report, but they don't have to report in the same way as an executive department of the city would. So if I'm sure, let me see what the agency. Yeah, or other unit of city government. They would not be considered a unit of city government because they are not created by statute or charter or the similar legislative act.
Now, does the compliance with this law apply to the agency head and senior staff of the Baltimore City public school system? Could we do this with the public
I would
school
say
system?
no. I would say no. They are separate. They're now, basically under the auspices of the state. This does not have any programmatic or any other authority with respect to this right now.
Okay. Thank you, Elena. I appreciate for answering those questions. Do my colleagues have any questions for Elena? And Elena, when you get a chance, can you let me know about the first question? I know you said that's the one you had to look up.
Yeah, I will. I'll send you an email.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
And so for the next question I have is for the Director of HR, Quentin Herbert. And so I'm wondering, at what percentage are we at citywide with compliance to this law?
Yes, as you know, we were submitting reports on compliance. I'm hearing an echo, I'm sorry. The last report that we submitted, we were at 100% compliance.
And so no new hires, no promotions that will require folks to live in the city?
Yes, we routinely look at the data and we advise new hires that are in positions that are subject to the law that if they don't reside in the city, they have to reside in the city within the first 180 days of employment.
Perfect, but we're on track, so that's good to know. What about the assistants, the deputy directors in your agencies, are they considered bureau or division heads?
No, our reading of the law was that the law was applicable to supervisory employees who report directly to the agency head. We don't have bureaus in DHR.
Perfect, thank you. I'm going to move on to Department of Public Works. I've got a message that's, are they here? Is department, who's representing the Department of Public Works?
Councilwoman, this is Marcia Collins, representing Department of Public Works. I haven't seen the whole list of participants, but also if they haven't joined already, we'll be joined by Julie Day, who is our Chief of Administration, and Ms. LaToya Curtis, who is the head of our HR department.
And LaToya is on the call.
Great. So in preparation for this hearing, we provided to the mayor's office, and I believe the mayor's office sent to you the 7 individuals who are covered under this residency requirement. Would you have that in front of you now?
Yes, we had that. So anything different, because we have they're in compliance.
Correct. We are in compliance with all of those. And then we also, at the committee's request, sent you a copy of our most recent org chart showing how they fit into the structure.
Yep, got it. Thank you. Do my colleagues have any questions for HR or Department of Public Works? No. Okay, we'll keep going.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Yes.
May I beg your indulgence? I have to also sit on the Planning Commission. May I be excused? Or do you need me to stick around in case we have additional questions?
No, I think you're good.
Okay, may I excuse our other representatives?
Yes, thank you.
All right, wonderful. If you have anything else, I'm sure Matt will let me know, and thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you. Have a good day.
You
So
too.
we'll move right on to Department of Transportation. We've asked for the org chart and we've asked for other information. We haven't received it. Liam, do you want to?
Yeah, and I want to apologize about the agency right now. So we just submitted the org chart just before today's hearing, and I'm working on gathering that information, that additional information. I apologize. That was a scheduling error on my part, and I'm going to be sure to get you this information as soon as possible. So our HR, internal HR people have been notified, and I've asked them to provide me to share with you guys a list of all of our division chiefs and direct appointees to Director Sharkey, including their residency status, so that you guys can get a clear picture of where the Department of Transportation is on compliance. And again, I apologize for the slip up. It was really just a scheduling error on my part.
That's fine. Let me just ask you this that you may know offhand. Is Director Steve Sharkey a Baltimore City resident?
Yes.
Is the senior advisor to the director, Frank Murphy, a city resident?
Yes.
Is, and I hope I'm saying her name right, Letitia Griffin, Deputy Director of Administration, is she a Baltimore City resident?
I'm not 100% sure, but she's one of the people who I asked to get the information, so I will know shortly.
And I always have a hard time pronouncing Theo's last name, Deputy Director of Plan.
Theo Ngongeng is a city resident as well.
Perfect. And Kenneth Chang, Bureau Operations Chief, is he a Baltimore City resident?
I will work on getting that answer for you.
Perfect. And Director of Communications, German Visual, is he a Baltimore City resident?
Those are all. I'm not 100% sure on his residency status, but I'll make sure that that's included.
Perfect. Any questions from my colleagues for DOT? Nope. We'll move right along.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. For the Health Department is the next agency that I'm going to jump into. I don't think I have anything from the Health Department.
Hey, Councilwoman, this is.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, I apologize. This is Jeff Aber, Senior Director of External Affairs on behalf of the Health Department. I apologize. We had a miscommunication between DePaul and I on submission. We sent over our files to the mayor's office a little while ago just to have that on file. We have 2 employees that this bill applies to based on our org chart. And we submitted that information. We're in compliance right now. Our chief of staff is one of those 2 employees and is a city resident, 21201. The other position is currently vacant. That's our chief medical officer. So that role is actively being recruited, but we are aware and we'll need to recruit a city resident for that role.
Thank you. Let me just make sure, let me go down my list of what I have. So the health commissioner, she actually lives in Baltimore City?
Yes.
Got it. Chief of staff, you said lives in Baltimore City?
Yep.
And Deputy Commissioner Mary Beth Haller lives in Baltimore City?
She does, but she does not report directly to the commissioner. She reports to the chief of staff.
Okay.
Our deputy commissioners report up through their chief of staff.
Got it. And so Jennifer Martin as well would report to the chief of staff?
Correct.
Yes.
So
all the deputy commissioners report to the chief of staff.
Right.
So what about the division chief, Leslie Thompson?
Also reports up through the chief of staff.
Elena, can you weigh in on this? Is this the reading of the law? Because this is not how I intended the law to read, for folks to report to the chief of staff instead of the actual directors and deputies of these agencies. I'm a little concerned. Can you weigh in?
What's your question again?
So it seems like in some respects we are circumventing the process of what should be, as in some of these folks should be reporting straight to the director of these agencies. And so it looks like they are reporting to the chief of staff. And that's not how the law was meant to be. That's not how I read it.
Well, I don't think the law doesn't have anything to say about how the org charts are designed by the individual agencies or departments. So it's just the law's applied to whatever the org chart happens to be.
Okay, I'll come back and so we can have a further conversation about that then, because I think maybe we need to go back and amend something. Do my colleagues have any questions for Baltimore City Health? No. Okay, we're going to move right on to the Baltimore City Fire Department. And so,
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. The fire department is in 100% compliance. We have executive fire chief who resides over certain parts of the organization. The chief of staff that's over certain administration portions of the department. And one lives in 21211 and the other one lives in 21214.
Perfect. And so even with the new hires as of April 15th, those two individuals are Baltimore City residents, the two assistant chiefs that were promoted?
They report to an executive chief, which is Chief Roman Clark.
Okay. But when we met the last time, they reported directly to you.
They did. And at that time I told you, I don't know if you recall, I said there's going to be a reorganization in our department. We were in the process of doing it well before that. And we created an executive assistant chief, which is actually consistent with certain other fire departments in the country.
And so, Elena, that's here again is a great example of what I mean. We're trying to put Baltimore City residents, get more people employed, more people paying taxes, more people who are affecting policies in our agencies. But yet it seems like because of this bill, folks are now reporting to for someone, and they then don't have to live in Baltimore City. But again, I'll come back to this, Elena, with you on one chat. Does the fire department have any plans to include residential preference points to civil service promotional tests to try to increase the pool of potential employees eligible to take these positions later in their career?
I don't know if we have authority over doing it in promotional exams. We do it in the hiring process. People initially come in the organization, they get preference points in that process.
Okay. And can you just tell me your thoughts on including residential preference points to the scoring mechanisms that you use to select members of your command staff?
The highest component in selecting the command staff, the portion that I have control over, there's only a few people I have control over hand selecting. And what I have to base that on at the highest level is competency. So that's the biggest portion of what I base it on.
Okay.
Because my issue is life safety. And I have to, not just the safety of the community, but also the safety of the members.
All right. Do my colleagues have any questions for the fire department? Nope. Well, I can't hear you, MPC.
Chief,
Yes.
what do you mean when you say you use a residency as your major determining factor in promotions?
No, ma'am.
Is that the ones you control? And then you said something about also have to take into consideration safety. I just
What I was talking about is initial hires, because the initial hires aren't part of a collective bargaining group. We are able to add certain incentive points to them being residency in the process of getting hired. So when they take an exam, they go through the promotional process, they get us the additional points during that process by them being residences. After that point, then there's collective bargaining that's involved with the other promotions up to the level when they become a part of a senior staff, which is a small group of people that report to me. And what I was saying at that point, I have to really pay attention to, my highest concern is competency and effectiveness, because those are the people that, case in point, during the gas explosion, those were the people who were in charge of what happened out there. So I have to make sure that they're very effective in that area.
Well, we would expect that.
But I encourage everybody to live in the city.
Okay. I get you. I hear what you're saying. We have a lot of competent people here. They're not all on the city council, maybe. But yeah, but I hear what you're saying. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Chief. And Quentin, the same question for you. What are your thoughts on including residential preference points in the scoring mechanism for folks filling out jobs here in the city?
With respect to civil service positions, as the chief alluded to, at the entrance exam stage where they are first being hired, there are preference points that are given for residency. There are also preference points given for veteran status as well. Those are highlighted in the civil service rules, that those preference points are to be given to those who they're applicable to. I kind of have some visceral ideas at how to get at a more robust residency platform, if that's what we want to get after.
Yes.
I think that, it would require partnering and delegating with the General Assembly to look at the legislature that currently exists to allow for the city to have a more robust residency requirement, particularly if we look at other jurisdictions that have done this around public safety. It's been done at the state level, and not so much just at the municipal level. If you look at Philadelphia, Chicago, there's some other major cities that have done this. The roadmap there is to work through the General Assembly. But I would also caution that there are potential issues that the city could realize with respect to recruitment and retention of top talent. And that's not to say that talented people don't reside in the city of Baltimore. Baltimore is full of talent. However, we are all competing for talent. Our closest partners, Montgomery PG and Baltimore County, are all competing for that same talent. To the extent that we would be an outlier with a more restrictive residency requirements, we may lose some of that talent to our closer competitors. So I just want us to all be aware of that as a potential issue as we move down this road.
Got it. Okay. Go ahead, Councilwoman. You're on mute now.
I very much respect what you're saying and the level of governments that have to be involved in this, but I think there's something of some kind of self-fulfilling prophecy also. If more and more people in a given department, frankly, especially the fire department and the police department, live in the city, it generates that kind of other people who want to be in those departments living in the city. I mean, it builds up because all these, especially I think fire and police, they live with each other. They want to hang at the same places. They want to, they want to be together. They don't want to be outliers. So we almost have to create that environment. And it sounds as if at the level where you have the ability to do that, you're making that count. It sounds, at the hiring and certain levels of promotion, but it's such a big deal if a firefighter, a fire officer, or a police officer lives on your block. I mean, it's really a big deal in Baltimore, and it makes people feel, and doing all you can at the level where you are making that a priority because you can, helps a lot for building a critical mass of members, of personnel, because they want to hang out together. That's just, it is when you're doing the kind of work they do.
All right.
It's
All right. Yep. Well, this is going to conclude. We're going to go into recess for Bill, for this one for, this is a resolution. And so we'll go into recess so we can jump over to our next bill. So thank you everyone for checking in to make sure that we are in compliance with this bill. I appreciate you guys. Have a good day.
Councilwoman Selena,
Yes.
I did send you a quick email on that initial question that you had.
Perfect. Okay, I'll take a look. Thank you. All right. So let's jump over to Bill 20-1562. This resolution was introduced on July 13th, 2020. I introduced the bill so we could actually establish a residential requirements for certain Baltimore City Police Department command staff and be able to provide exceptions to these residential requirements, define certain terms providing for the prospective applications on this ordinance, generally relating to the residential requirement as limited by state law for certain Baltimore Police Department employees, and providing for a special effective date. And I'll just go ahead and start with the law department. Go ahead, Elena.
Hello. Okay, we're on City Council Bill 20-0562. The Law Department has provided its report. Can you hear me? Okay. We went into a little depth about, the whole state legislation because there were a lot of different time periods mentioned within that law. So the state law takes effect in October. We didn't want anyone to think we didn't have the authority to pass this law now, even though the state legislation isn't technically effective yet. There is case law out there that says in a local government can pass, if it's given the authority in state law to do something, even though that state law's effective date has not happened yet, the local government can, in anticipation of that, pass legislation. However, it can't be effective until the effective date of the state law. So you can do this in advance as long as you're not making it effective prior to whatever the date is I think it's October 1st of 2020. And then, we went in, we talked a little bit about why we have not been able to approve this type of residency requirement for police in the past. But this legislation in the General Assembly amended our public local law with respect to the police department and allows for the passage of this legislation by the City Council. So that's it in a nutshell from the Law Department.
Perfect. Thank you. And does Department of Human Resources, I don't see written anymore.
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
We submitted our report. We take no position on the bill. We think that it does bring the police department into consistency with the rest of the city. However, I echo back and harken back to what I said earlier. I think that if we want to really get at the residency piece, and we want to see an increase in city residents in these types of positions and in job classifications, I don't think the way to get at it is to look at those who are at the very top of the agency. I think you need to look at it for those who are coming in, and that's going to require further state legislation to allow the city to have a residency requirement for those employees who are coming in. One of the things that Chicago did was they had a residency requirement for many, many years. What they did was to relax it a bit and to require public safety employees to reside in the city of Chicago for the first 5 years of their employment, which made it more powerful for people who may have opted to seek that type of employment outside of the city of Chicago. And that's something that I would recommend, but again, it would require legislation at the state level to allow the city to have that type of residency requirement for those positions.
Thank you. Councilman Bill Henry just joined us. I think this bill is a little different, though, from our regular civilian bill, because we have to work on our relationship between police officers and our residents here in Baltimore City. And this is just another piece on how we can work on that relationship. Councilwoman Mary Pat Clark said it before, when you have a teacher, when you have a police officer, someone from the fire department who actually live on your block, who's your neighbor, that's another layer of getting to know one another, and not always have those eyes of a suspect, and knowing the community and just how each neighborhood is different, one from another. And I believe living here sort of makes that impact. So this one is a little different from the previous bill that we heard. So I just wanted to point that out.
Absolutely, I agree. But I was just mentioning that because the bill applies to certain members of the command staff. And so when you're moving up to that level of police officers, we're talking about a very limited number of individuals, many of whom have spent their careers serving citizens of the city of Baltimore. And by the time people get to that level of career, it's the reality that for some who have been employed for more than 10 years, they may have lived in the city for the first 10 years of their employment. They may be looking to move out into the suburbs for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which education, things of that nature. It almost is punitive in some regards to those employees, which is why I said that my philosophy, and I think that what we're seeing trending from an HR perspective, is that the way to get at the residency piece, particularly for the public safety employees, is to get them when they first come in and have them establish their roots in the city. You're going to get people who live in the city already applying, but to those who want to get in their door, if they understand that city residency is a requirement, they kind of establish their roots in the city from the very beginning of their career. It's just I think that there are a couple of ways to look at it, and I'd be happy again to talk with you more about it offline, but it's going to require partnership with our state partner.
Perfect. I'm interested in hearing more, so I definitely will reach out so I can get on your calendar so we can talk about it. Thank you. I'm just going to go right over to the police department and whoever wants to.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman, members of the committee. My name is Michelle Wurzberger. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Baltimore Police Department. The department stands by its report. I am joined today by Eric Melanton, who is our Chief of Staff, and Amy Guevara, who is our Managing Director of Human Resources.
Do you guys want to say anything about this bill? Any opening words, statement before we get into questioning?
Just that, we're not opposing the legislation. We we believe it is a requirement that we understand where it's coming from, and we worked with folks in the legislature to voice our concerns. Those concerns are outlined in our bill report, and I would refer the members of the committee to that.
Perfect. So for my first question that I have in reference to this is, currently the police department has 4 chiefs who are the civilian equivalent to sworn colonels. Would this law apply to them as well?
Based on our interpretation, the answer is no.
And Elena, is that how you read it as well? Because when you look at the org chart, there are 3 positions, like I said, that it's on the same level.
Well, if they would have to fit within the definition, I don't know exactly, what the obligations or the responsibilities of those individual colonels are, but they have to be, a member, they have to have the rank of colonel as of January the 2022, and be promoted, subsequently promoted to the rank of deputy. So, I'm sorry, that's the exception to the rule. So if they are part of the command staff that is not subject to that exception, so they're the rank of colonel or the rank of deputy commissioner at the time the bill takes effect, then they would be subject to it unless they're part of the scope restriction in B.
What it's worth, I live in the city.
Yay, thank you. We're glad to hear that.
I live in Northeast, so yeah.
Okay, I'll follow back up then, because I'll work with you, Eric, to ask about those 3 positions and to learn more about their titles and what it in details.
And if I could clarify, just in listening to the conversation that we just had on the previous resolution, in trying to identify bureaus or divisions within our department, bureaus are how we structure our department, and deputy commissioners run bureaus here. So this residency bill that's being considered now for us would qualify under the bureau definitions of kind of that like for like.
Okay. All right. I'll come back. I'll work with you to find out a little bit more about what they're doing. My second question is, does the police department have any plans to include residential preference points to civil services promotional tests in a way to try to increase the pool of potential employees eligible to take these positions later in their careers?
You talk about entry level positions?
Mm-hmm. Civil service, yeah.
So, because of the staffing shortages we have as a department, we want to make sure we're taking every qualified applicant that we can clear through our process. We want to target, and we have made a significant effort to target more city residents and to encourage new hires to live in the city by offering them a host of publicly available incentive packages like tax abatements and so forth. But I think that when you're talking about prioritizing a hire of an in-city versus an out-of-city resident, I think that becomes more operative once we have a fully staffed department and we're looking at trying to be more selective when it comes to how we fill our vacancies. Right now, we have about 215 vacancies. And so we are actively trying to recruit anyone who wants to come and be part of the department and is qualified to do so. So at this time, we're not interested in imposing or creating a priority system where we are just trying to fill as many academy classes as we can to reach our staffing level.
Say that number again of vacancies.
215.
215.
Sworn positions that are vacant.
And so, and you kind of already alluded to this, but I'm just going to ask it anyway. So your thoughts on including residential preference points to the scoring mechanism that you will use in Departmental Policy 1738, Command Promotions and Promotion Committee. So what are your thoughts on those then?
So part of what we have as a mandate, and this is referred to in our response letter for the committee's consideration. We have a mandate that we consider the best qualified supervisors to move up in the various ranks. I think I would echo what Chief Ford had said when it comes to public safety and ensuring our highest qualified applicants are moving up through the command. At this time, that policy is undergoing vetting and public comment. So that policy, which is in draft still, I would invite anyone who wants to make the recommendations to that policy to provide that comment back so that our monitor team can consider it and it can be part of what's used in finalization. So this is an opportune moment, a council member, for if that input is something you want to provide to the monitoring team so that it can be considered.
Well done.
But again, the department is faced with trying to make sure that it's prioritizing for promotion the best qualified applicants. And so it's not in the current draft at this time, but there's a public comment period. So that's what it's there for.
Okay. Do any of my colleagues, I saw Councilman Henry's hand go up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually wanted to ask if we could go back to a previous question that I was trying to follow, but it was hard to follow without having the bill in front of me. So I've brought the bill up now, and I'm rereading it. The question about whether the civilian employees with the chief rank, whether they were impacted by this. I was trying to follow what Mr. Petro said, and now that I have the bill in front of me, it says that a command staff member is defined as a member with the rank of colonel or the rank of deputy commissioner. So I would think, and this is where I'm looking back to Mr. Petro, I would think that would mean that if your rank is something else, like chief, then you are not a colonel or a deputy commissioner, and therefore it does not apply to you.
Also, I think you have to be, if you were a civilian, I don't think it would apply either because you have to be a member of the police department. I think members are considered only sworn personnel. I could be wrong about that, but the police people can.
The state definitions vary. I'll
Okay.
just leave it at that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that.
But my understanding is that that is the language as it is written in the state enabling legislation.
That a member is a sworn member of the department, not necessarily a civilian. Or?
No, that we're talking about colonels and deputy commissioners.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And so, Councilman Henry, so the one who is listed at technology, finance, forensic science, and evidence services, Chief Stephen Odell and Chief of Financial Officer, like they're chiefs, they're on the same level of our colonels, though, and that's why that's where I got the question.
And I get that. Madam Chair, if you'll excuse me, if you'll indulge me in this, I've been spending a lot of time with org charts. I've been spending a lot of time with org charts lately, and one of the things that I've come to recognize is there are a lot of city org charts where people who are the same number of levels down from the top have a variety of ranks, titles, and pay. So I think I appreciate what the intent is, but I think it's pretty clear that if the intention was to get a broader grasp of the command staff in sort of in the way your legislation regarding civilian employees for the city
Councilman, you keep going in and out, so I believe we're missing a lot of what you are saying.
Can you hear me?
You're in now.
Okay, all right. So the ironic thing is I'm right upstairs. So I'm on the small Wi-Fi. So we'll hope for the best. What I was going to say is the legislation governing residency requirements for other city employees defines the pool of impacted employees in terms of who do you report to. And it looks like the state authorizing legislation for this, instead of saying reporting directly to someone who reports to the commissioner, reporting directly, it's defined in terms of rank. So that's going to just affect people with those specific ranks. It's not going to affect all of the civilian positions that are being restructured to be, frankly, at command staff level.
Correct. I think that was our initial intent of what we were trying to do initially when it was in Annapolis. But our senator, based on it seems like a little bit of pushback on why the commissioner didn't think it was a good idea to do it, is why why that got scratched and why we're down to the way that it is. Not that it would have been the whole department in the first place, but it would have been a little bit more.
And if I have a broader bit of opining, but if you'd like, I'm happy to wait until later in the hearing.
We are about finished.
Okay.
So
Well,
if you have,
then I guess what I would say is I've been thinking a lot about this bill for the last couple of days, especially since I found out that one of the suggestions I was going to make at today's hearing, apparently I can't make because of how tightly constrained the state authorizing legislation is. I was going to suggest that we consider grandfathering in the people who are already at the ranks just below this, for the simple reason that, and this is something that I've held true to for a while now. Back when the finance department came to us and said that we needed to change the retirement plan for the fire and police because it was driving us into bankruptcy. I said there's a difference between saying that we have to come up with a new structure going something different on the people who are already there, who already took jobs and with expectations of what the rules were. And so are major and have given up the protections of civil service inside the police department, did so with the understanding that even if they didn't live in the city, that wasn't a condition of their job. And so I am concerned about the fact that if we do this as is, someone who right now is a major or a lieutenant colonel and doesn't live in the city, but frankly is part of the leadership pool that the commissioner and his senior staff are looking to for potential promotion, to suddenly constrain that pool with no effective warning to just the people who either already live in the city or are capable of moving back into the city. And by capable, I will say that if I told my wife that my job had changed in such a way that now I have to move to the county, she would look at me funny. And in that same regard, I wanted to offer an amendment that would grandfather in people of promotable rank. or suggest is, given that the authorizing statute doesn't capture what you were hoping to capture in terms of what positions it impacted, and considering that it doesn't allow the flexibility for grandfathering that I think is the fairer way to approach making this managerial change, would you say that we should just wait and try to get a better authorizing statute that gives us room to do more of what we should be doing if we're going to make this very significant managerial change? That was my proposal. But I think Clark wanted to.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
I want to object. With all due respect, let's do what we can do and keep doing it until it adds up to something. I thought this was the city council that was going to change the world, equity and all that kind of stuff. And it's a risky business. It's risky. We can lose some people. We can lose some people who will not want to be promoted, for example. Yes, we are going to lose them. It is hard. And it is our job to make the cities and the schools in the city where all these men and women officers go and available and attractive. But if we're going to do change, we got to take the chances that come along. This is a classic state bill that's authorizing us to go to the top ranks on a limited basis and actually, if I read it right, and I might be wrong, actually the current people who hold those ranks are exempted, and it only happens when in a couple years the thing comes into and people being promoted are the ones are subject to the bill. So like it almost does nothing, but like a lot of nothings, it's a start. And it really is about intention and plan so that people in the police department who have responsibilities and are shaking their head right now at me understand there's an intent going on that has to be taken into consideration. And it's kind of like a equity thing that knows it's going to have some bad times before it do critical mass.
If I could respond to the council.
I'm done. Yeah.
If I could respond to the council, first of all, I just want to say I wasn't shaking my head. I was nodding my head. Number two.
I'm blind.
Number two, just to reaffirm the interpretation that you're correct. It's the currently serving colonels and deputy commissioners are exempt.
They're exempt.
Grandfathered in. And the effective date of the enabling legislation, and therefore this legislation is January 1, 2022.
I know.
Which gives us lead time to socialize the requirement, which is something we requested as part of the compromise of the legislation when it was being enabled. Again,
what does that mean? Like go out for beers with guys and all the officers that are going to get hit with this?
It's important for us to make sure folks understand the requirements, and we like to send things out in advance, and it's usually done through email. I won't put alcoholic socialization off the table.
Well, I'm whatever it takes.
This is something again. The commissioner, when this was brought to the department's consideration in the session. There was a lot of discussion. There was a lot of back and forth. There is an unintended consequence of restricting.
It's almost intended. It's not intended, but it's understood. But you
that's correct.
Anywhere if you don't go.
Right. And so,
but again, it allows us with enough lead time to
Yeah,
implement.
you got 2 years or year and a half. You can get them all crazed with socialization and
So because the way it's
mass, they'll affect one another.
absolutely. So because of the way it's structured, the department has no objection.
So Councilman Henry,
Let's do it.
can we, because the HR director made some good points as well that maybe we can come back to, but if we can just get this passed
Let's
and then
do
work
it.
on some other things, I would want to just first get this passed and then work on some other stuff later with our
Move
Senate
to
Children
approve.
Delegate. So I just, is anybody
Move to approve.
Anybody, a second?
Second.
Perfect.
Do we have a quorum?
Councilwoman Shannon, is it yes? Councilman Robert Stokes is absent. Councilwoman McCray? I think she said yes. I think that was a yes. Was that a yes, Councilwoman?
That was yes.
Okay, I thought so. Thank you. Councilwoman Clark?
Yes.
Councilman Henry?
So take a minute to explain my vote, which is that if with 3 votes in the affirmative, it's going to come out of committee. So I think I'm going to, at this point, I'm going to abstain and I'm going to get it to come to the council at the council meeting, and that gives a couple weeks to think about I'm going to look for Mary Pat like she can't hear what I'm saying.
No, I didn't want to interrupt in the middle of a vote count, but I wish I could.
So I'm going to pass.
Okay. So that's 3 yeses, and so it will make it to the next city council meeting. 1 absent, 1 abstain, and so, okay, Councilman, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, and don't forget to invite me around for those beers.
Got it.
We'll all be happy to join you. Okay.
I'll be doing it through a social distance though. Council.
We live in social distance and we find it very actually interesting. Yes. Get to a big bar. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Mary, I think I got you out on time, Councilwoman.
You got me out on time. I got to go to a hearing.
Talk to you later. Bye.
At that hearing, they want me to talk. Go figure.